This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We're in San Jose today at the California Democratic Party Convention. And by the time this interview airs, we will have a new speaker of the California State Assembly, and he is with us right now. His name is Anthony Rendon. Congratulations.
Thank you, Brad.
It's quite an accomplishment. Who knew 3-4 years ago you would be successful in your election, and now you are the next speaker?
I think no one knew other than you.
Exactly. I did call it. I did call it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Mr. and Mrs. Rendon. And I don't mean Anthony and Annie. I mean your parents.
Right.
What do they think of all this?
They're excited. They think it's been going on for a while.
Right.
Yeah. The swearing in is on March 7th.
Right.
Wrapped up the election in September. So they're kind of confused by the long lead.
Right.
They say, let's just do this.
And what does it mean to you? And I ask this after having read quite an article in the LA Times, and I know that article, I know of what
Sure.
I reference. That article was very moving and very compelling. I mean, I didn't even know your history and how, you hit some bumps along the way.
Sure did.
But yet, wow, I mean, you're the Speaker of the California State Assembly.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, I grew up in a very working class environment. Grade point average in school at one point was 0.83. So working in factories and warehouses, unloading trucks on the graveyard shift. And the greatness of California's public education system, community college, Cal State,
Right.
UC. I was able to go get my PhD and started a little bit late, but ended up.
How do you do that? How do you go from a 0.83 to becoming Dr. Anthony Rendon, and how do you transfer that to 38 million Californians?
You do it through a lot of hard work, but with
Right.
help too. I mean, the fact that we have that higher education,
Right.
the public system of higher education in place is really what makes the difference for a lot of Californians, myself included.
And explain how your past does inform your service in the Assembly and now your leadership in the Assembly.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's not only the fact that I attended the whole higher education, public
Right.
education system, but the fact that I worked in the nonprofit sector for
Sure.
20 years, running early childhood education programs, running gang reduction programs. I understand sort of what happens on the ground with people who provide a lot of the services that we help to fund in the state.
And so, what do you hope to achieve during your tenure as Speaker, and a tenure that will likely be much longer than the last 10 speakers we've had, because you're in a regime now where you can stay in this body for 12 years.
Right.
Starting in 1996, I think it was, the tenure was 6 years max.
Sure, exactly. Yeah, again, I'm part of the 12-year class, so we're going to be there for a while. But I think the way you're successful, the way I was successful as a student, was
Right.
every day. Take every day as it comes. You sort of plan a year at a time,
Sure.
but you make sure you focus on the job at hand, and that's what we're going to do. But the fact that we get to be there so long means we get to focus on things like infrastructure.
Right.
Means we get to work on things like sort of rebuilding our university
Sure.
system. We get to work on a lot of long-term infrastructural things, and that's exciting.
I know you're you, and you're just you, but you are making history in that you are heading the Assembly at a time when your counterpart in the Senate is also of Latino descent.
Right.
What does that mean to you, if anything? What does it mean to California, if anything?
Right. It means that the legislature itself, the leadership is more representative of the population of the state than ever before. But I think what's more important about whether or not it's significant that Kevin
Right.
and I are Latino, I think what's more important is the fact that Kevin and I are folks, we're both leaders who reach out to other communities, who work with other caucuses, who work with other parties. I think that's more significant, and ultimately that's what's going to be better for the state than anything.
And how do you work with other communities? I don't just mean ethnic communities.
Sure.
I mean interest groups in
Right.
the best sense. When, look, we have a Democratic majority in this state.
Right.
You may hit supermajority status at a certain point.
Right.
That type of power can be intoxicating,
Right.
but you still want to be able to represent all of California, even the most right-wing corner
Right.
of the state, presumably.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think the best example of that for me and for our class was the water bond. I did 18 public hearings throughout The year and a half that we worked on the water bond, we started in Coachella, 18 public hearings up the state, all the way to Redding and Eureka, all sorts of topographies, all sorts of different economies, all sorts of political ideologies. That bill ended up, we had one no vote from the Republicans, one no vote from the Democrats. We worked to try to get every single vote, and I think that's the kind of leadership that we want to
And
provide.
so talk about how you plan to work with Chad Mays, who is the GOP leader in the California State Assembly. Nice guy, young.
Great guy, good friend. Yeah, he gave one of the nominating speeches when I was elected speaker.
Right.
Chad has the same challenges that I do.
Right.
We have very diverse caucuses, and trying to make sure that we're all on the same page is a tough job. But I mean, he's up for the challenge.
But
for
I'm
sure.
wondering if the fact, and maybe I'm making too much of it, you're both around the same age. He may be younger.
I
but,
think he's younger.
But you get my point. I mean, generationally, you have the same Brady Bunch references, or maybe he has, Full House.
I think he has Saved by the Bell.
Saved by the Bell.
But,
but I mean, is that invaluable?
I think it is. I think it is. I think just our personal relationship is invaluable. Let's say Chad is 5 to 10 years younger than me. When I was teaching when I was teaching in the university, I was teaching with folks sort of from that generation.
Right.
What I discovered was they tend to be less ideological than folks from my generation and previous generations. They focus on results, and they focus on sort of the validity of various arguments.
So here we are at the California Democratic Party convention.
Yep.
A lot of excitement. Vice President Biden will be speaking. We're heading into our June primary, into our November general election. What we see recently, statistics released from the Secretary of State, that in terms of Democratic registration is essentially flat. Republican registration is down. Decline to state is up. I guess flat's better than down.
Right.
But how do you grow the Democratic base?
Well, that sort of harkens back to what I was talking about earlier. This next generation is, again, less ideological, less interested in party labels. They're interested in results. They don't really care if someone's a Democrat or a Republican or a conservative or a liberal. They want us to accomplish things, and that's what's really important. So I think that's how you appeal to folks, is you make sure you get things done. Again, working on infrastructure, working on our education system, making sure that we're not focused on arguing with one another, but focused on getting stuff done.
And when you think about the Democratic voting bloc now, and I'm going to make a presumption that Hillary Clinton is the nominee.
Right.
I don't know if you've endorsed her, but have you endorsed?
I have endorsed her.
Okay, so presume she's the nominee. She's done fairly well among various interest groups, women, Latinos, African Americans. The youth have not been behind her as much. And what we know from voting patterns and voting trends, Democrats win when the young vote.
Absolutely.
How are you, as a leader of the Democratic Party, going to get the young who've been supporting Senator Sanders, to go out in November and support the presumed nominee, Hillary Clinton?
I think the way you do that is to draw the clear contrast. No matter who the Republican nominee is, there are going to be clear contrasts between he and, I assume, Ms. Clinton. And you focus on those contrasts, focus on those differences, and draw them out.
And let's make another presumption that Mr. Trump is a nominee.
Right.
Do you think that in California, at least, his apparent unpopularity, I'm just looking at the polls, could actually cause a groundswell of Democratic pickups that one would not anticipate?
I would hope so.
I know you would hope so, but let's really, let's not dream.
Right.
Do you think that he could be that damaging? Again, I'm not saying my position, I'm just wondering.
No, I think that's very much possible. What often happens in California, just because of our time zone, just because we know where we're going to end up, a lot of folks end up not going out, particularly in the last couple of hours. I could see a lot of people showing up just for a protest vote against Trump, and that could be helpful for us.
Okay, his name is Anthony Rendon. He is about to be the Speaker of the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're in San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention. This is Charter Local Edition. This is Charter Local Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance in San Jose at the California Democratic Party Convention. You heard it here. Ed Hernandez, Dr. Ed Hernandez, Senator Ed Hernandez is running for Lieutenant Governor of our great state of California. That election will be held in 2018. Dr. Ed, Senator, why have you decided to make a run for Lieutenant Governor of our great state?
Well, first of all, I love being a public servant. And I think the next step for me is to serve at that capacity because there's a lot of work I want to get done with education, bring more business to the state of California, and make a big difference in our great state, especially in policy.
So let's talk about the actual position of Lieutenant Governor. I think some perceive that there isn't a lot of defined responsibility for that job. I have learned otherwise, especially as it relates to boards and commissions. So talk to me about what boards and commissions Lieutenant Governor serves upon and why that really matters.
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's an incredible job because it allows me the opportunity to have a voice, to bring business to California, but more importantly, the boards you're talking about, some of the biggest and most important, the UC Board of Regents, the CSU Board of Regents. And if you think about the UC Board of Regents, we have one of the best university systems in the state that we have to make sure we're going to keep up with this new economy and make sure we get kids that are going to be able to compete. The Lands Commission.
That's key. I mean, the State Lands Commission is so important. Explain what it is and why being on that commission is powerful.
Well, I wouldn't say powerful.
But you know what I'm getting.
But yes.
But it's an important position. I put it in quotes. I did put it in quotes.
To deal with how we're going to be doing our oil, the oil reserves, the coast, protecting the coast. I mean, these are all important issues that we need to make sure that we protect and make sure, more importantly, that we have a strong lieutenant governor that has a voice within that.
And I want to talk about your statement with regard to luring business into our state. The current Lieutenant Governor, Gavin Newsom, he has been out and about. I've noticed that. He goes to Texas. He goes to places that are trying to pluck business away from us. Explain why that fits. Why does that model work of the Lieutenant Governor being kind of the champion for business in California?
Because that's the role, and they actually are challenged and tasked to be business development.
I see.
And being a business owner myself.
Oh, yes.
And understanding the need to make sure that California continues to grow. Why aren't we out in other states? Why do you keep hearing about Texas trying to draw businesses to California? We should be going the other way around. And if you look at California, there are still more businesses coming in. The economy is improving. The budgets are increasing as far as our state budget. I mean, this is a great state to do business, and I would be the perfect individual to be able to say that in other states and bring it to California.
And I do want to drill down on that issue, because it's easy to say that California is a high-tax state, high-regulation state, but if you really drill down, and I'm the dork and nerd that did that, when you look at taxes, we really aren't that high a tax state, especially on the corporate side. We have a lot of tax incentive programs. We're kind of in the middle. But when you look at regulation, sir, it is hard to deny that our regulatory environment is pretty severe. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, I agree, and I don't disagree. But I think that's something that needs to be done at the policy level. And look at all these entities that have all these powers to regulate businesses per se.
Right.
But here's an interesting comment that I heard Jerry Brown once said when he was at the Democratic caucus meeting one time. And he said, we're overregulated. He goes, the economy in this state is so big, regulations are like rocks in a stream. There's just so much going through it, they're going to find their way through. And this is such a great state from the environment. You've got educational systems here. You've got opportunity to do high-tech business. People want to come here. Money's going to come here. Yes, regulations. It's a problem, but
that's part of the irony.
You
mentioned the environmental nature of our state and the beautiful coast and the beautiful mountains.
Right.
At some level, I feel as if we in California are schizophrenic. We love our environment. We want to protect our environment, and that means more regulation per se, but yet on the other hand we say we're overregulated. So how do we balance the desire for a positive economic environment with a positive environmental stewardship?
I mean, you can do it, and I'm going to use this as an example. I'm going to guess in the 80s. Do you remember smog alerts?
Oh,
okay.
I was hard for me to walk home from school because I couldn't breathe.
Okay, so when I went to graduate school, married my wife, came back, you couldn't see the San Gabriel Mountains from where we lived. Now you can.
Right.
And yes, okay, gas might be slightly higher,
right.
But I think there's a price to pay to make sure that we have clean air, clean water, and make sure we have a great environment. Because look at freeways. You have a lot of problems with asthma, especially in poor communities. So that has to be a priority for us in the state of California, and you have to have that fine balance where we don't go too far.
So what about, for example, CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act? That is one piece of legislation that in some ways has done a tremendous amount to protect our beautiful state. On the other end, many folks have felt that it's been used as a weapon in litigation. Even Governor Brown has said it's the Lord's work to reform CEQA. Yet, we don't see much CEQA reform unless it comes with a football stadium attached.
No, I don't disagree. And it's, like you said, it has its pluses, but it does definitely have its minuses. Unfortunately, there's some individuals or groups that'll actually use CEQA as a way to stop a project.
Right.
And I think if we as policymakers want to take a look at it, we should look at how we're going to make sure that only the best of CEQA takes effect.
So do you feel as if we will see some form of regulatory reform? Can you, as Lieutenant Governor, champion that? If you want to, maybe you don't.
Yeah. I mean, I can always have a voice. Unfortunately, I can't move or introduce legislation, but I can always speak about it and talk about that and make sure that that's an issue to bring more jobs over to California.
So let's talk about running for Lieutenant Governor. You represent about 1 million folks currently. That's as big as some states, actually, but a fairly compact district. You will be running in a state of 38 million people, 58 counties. It sounds like a lot of fun to be able to campaign through up and down the state, but explain how you do it.
Well, running statewide is a lot different than running locally. However, the dynamics of any campaign are the same. Unfortunately, it's money is the mother's milk.
Right.
So obviously raising money. But the other thing, there's a basic element that people forget. And if you look at multimillionaires who think they can just run and win, and this state is littered with millionaires.
That have lost.
That have lost. And it's just, going to those barbecues, shaking hands, and you say, okay, well, there's a lot of people in a lot of states. But that's why I'm here in this convention, meeting delegates who I don't have relationships with, starting 3 years early. I'm starting to do trips in different parts of the state. I've been to the Central Valley where I visited a packer, a farm. We did, I'm visiting all of the state of California.
I want to get a sense from you, because I'm so lucky that as part of this job I get to travel up and down California. So I have some sense of the variety of our great state. What's your sense? Are we as disparate as people think, or is there kind of a thread that comes through California, east, west, north, south?
I mean, there's obviously a clear distinction between large cities, coastal being a little bit more liberal, central being a little bit more conservative. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's still a Californian. And if you look at, say, the Central Valley, it is the largest industry that we have for our egg industry.
Well, it's a salad bowl to America.
To America.
Right.
And it's crucial that we make sure that they're, successful, that, the growers are successful, and we look at how we're going to make sure that the coast is protected at the same time. And California is just a very interesting place. And what's so interesting about California is it's a difficult state to govern, and the reason why it's difficult is because of its diversity, but yet it's that diversity that makes it so special.
You heard it here. His name is Ed Hernandez. He is a member of the California State Senate. He is a doctor of optometry. Did I say that right?
Yep, that's right.
He is now running for lieutenant governor of our great state. That election will be held in November of June
of 2018.
And then November of 2018. I'm at the California Democratic Party Convention in San Jose, California. We thank you so much for watching Charter Local Edition. This is Charter Local Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we're in San Jose today. We're at the California Democratic Party Convention, and we are joined today by Jimmy Gomez. He is a member of the California State Assembly. And sir, I'd like to speak with you about, we'll call it environmental justice. There's been a lot of talk in the news about this gas leak in Porter Ranch, the Chatsworth area of the San Fernando Valley. it's gotten national coverage, and people are in fits and starts over it. And as I understand it, it is an incident that's been going on for about, let's say, 3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
But there's an incident that's been going on, I think, in or near your district.
Correct.
It's been going on for 33 years.
Yes.
It's called Exide. Tell me about Exide, and then I want to compare and contrast.
So Exide's a battery plant in Vernon that has been open on a temporary permit for over 30 years from the state of California.
Could you explain to me how one can operate under a temporary permit for 30 years?
Well, that's the big issue, is that they shouldn't be operating for 30 years under a temporary permit. And what was discovered after years is that this battery plant was polluting into the surrounding neighborhoods lead. And this is not lead that was in the air, it got into the ground, and really kind of became an environmental catastrophe. So it's something that's been there for a very, very long time. But I know that a lot of folks have been talking about Exide in comparison to Porter Ranch,
Right.
where people got sick. They're very different situations. One is more of an acute
I see.
environmental catastrophe
Okay.
where people were saying that they were getting ill
At that exact moment.
at that exact moment, which garnered a lot of attention. At the same time, Exide was something that's been going on, but really kind of silent.
Long-term effects?
Long-term effects are devastating on the families. Any kid that gets exposed to lead, we already know has developmental disabilities, that has developmental
is the
problems.
comparison fair?
The comparison, it's not. It's fair because it once away. What had happened is it actually said Porter Ranch helped kind of shine a
really?
spotlight
Okay.
on the Exide situation, and the fact that two different communities in California are treated very differently. One,
Right.
like Porter Ranch, gets a lot of media attention, a lot
It's
of
wealthier.
It's very wealthy. It's more affluent. The property values are higher, and the other one is not. And what you're seeing is a lot of attention given to a community like that. But it makes sense in some ways, but also it helps shed a light.
Right.
The fact that East LA, the unincorporated areas, the areas that don't have as high property values are often ignored. And you have this kind of double standard on the way they're treated. So
I'm wondering, sir, if in addition to the attention paid to Porter Ranch, did the fact that there was a lead crisis in Flint, Michigan, help shine a light on Exide because it was also lead poisoning? The pipes were leaching lead in that community.
I think part of Flint, Michigan, Porter Ranch, as well as almost every single elected official for the first time on the east side of Los Angeles, northeast and southeast Los Angeles, speaking with one voice, and everybody making it kind of now a top priority. And what you saw is this echo chamber that I think the governor couldn't ignore.
Right.
But I got to commend him that he actually, we were asking for a lot less, and he put
Right,
up a
and
lot
let's
more.
talk about that. So you had been asking, you and your colleagues, for $70 million
Correct.
in kind of emergency funds.
Yeah.
He came back appropriating $176 million.
Correct. Yeah.
Appreciated, surely.
Yeah.
But as I understand it, you still need another $225 million minimum.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
Correct. The 176 is a down payment to test a lot of the homes, but we still need a lot more to clean them up. Because the only way you can clean them up is literally removing the soil and shipping it out.
So how quickly does this happen?
Well, the 176 million is a good start. I don't know the exact timeline on the cleanup, but it's for a long time we weren't even getting acknowledged. But we also have to acknowledge that in Porter Ranch, it was Southern California Edison, if I'm correct.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Or was it TWP? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
No, I think it's SoCal Edison.
Yeah, with the gas leak.
Right.
They're a large company that they're not going to go bankrupt. So they're responding to the cleanup request rather quickly. Exide dragged it out and even filed for bankruptcy. So we couldn't get the money from Exide, so the state had to step in to make sure that it was actually taken care of, and the people aren't waiting another 30 years for the cleanup.
But for argument's sake, the $400 million comes in for cleanup. What about healthcare? What about those costs?
This is, you're right. The exposure to lead is going to have long-term consequences on individuals' health. So the cleanup's first part, then looking at assessing the impacts on people's health and what we need to do to make sure that they're mitigated or assisted.
So where do we go with, for example, the Department of Toxic Services and the AQMD? How do we get, because apparently those are the departments that arguably fell down on
Yeah.
this. What do you do about that?
Well, first and foremost, I think now that you have 12-year assembly members, 12-year legislators, we're not going away. In the
Okay.
past, if you really look at a lot of these problems that had emerged from just delays and delays and delays, is that bureaucracies could outweigh the elected officials.
Right.
And it's not surprising that a lot of it started once term limits took effect.
Interesting.
And the elected officials would get
Right.
elected and termed out, and then somebody else would need to pick up the mantle. And once that happened, you have to start from scratch, and by the time you make any momentum, you're gone. So now, like a good example, this would be my last reelect, and I'll be termed out in 2 years.
If you had been under the prior regime.
Exactly, but I'm not going anywhere, so I can actually stay focused
Right.
on this. So that's our responsibility as elected officials, to keep their feet to the fire.
If I remember correctly, I do think you went somewhere recently, and that was Nevada. Am I
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Were you in Nevada campaigning for Hillary?
I was.
So I want to talk about that,
Okay.
especially since we're at the California Democratic Party convention. How was that?
Nevada, I love caucuses. I love the primary system. You get to see a flavor of the United States and then understand that democracy is very different from state to state.
Sure.
In '08, I was actually campaigning for Hillary in 7 states and Puerto Rico. So I was all over.
Wow.
So this one was, I went back to Nevada this time, different as an elected official.
Of course, surely.
You don't need to knock on as many
Right.
doors, but it's exciting because it's real people face to face deciding who they're going to support for
So
president.
what do they think about the fact that here's Jimmy Gomez and other members of the California legislature
Yeah.
coming to Nevada on behalf of a candidate, whomever that candidate may be?
They love it. Most of Nevada and Las Vegas, it's a city of transplants. People move there
Well
from
stated.
all over the country, if not the world, and even a lot from California. So anybody you talk to, they're usually from somewhere else.
Right.
And they like the fact that we still care about them. They get a lot of attention, and they like the fact that we go in there and spend money, right?
Sure,
So,
no doubt.
there's a fact, they've shown statistically, like the first 3 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, get an uptick in spending when all these
Wow.
people and all these campaign staffers converge.
I want to talk about the Latino vote.
No.
There's been controversy about how well Mrs. Clinton did
Yeah.
with regard to the Latino vote. Anecdotally, do you have a sense of Latino support for Mrs. Clinton?
Yeah, the Latino support, the Latino community was the bedrock of her campaign in 2008. And they haven't
She
left-
won Nevada then.
Yeah, she won Nevada then. She won the caucuses. I also heard that the sampling that there was done, the exit polling that was
Right.
done in the caucuses was off.
Right.
Oversampled young people.
And you also look at the Latino precincts, as I understand it, in Clark County,
Correct.
Las Vegas,
Yeah.
and she did extremely well there.
So I have no doubt that the Latino community is strongly in support of Hillary. And I saw this in 2008. So I'm confident that she still has a lot of support. And this was against Barack Obama, which was a
Right.
lot tougher of a race.
So you feel as if California will be in the Hillary column
Oh.
come June and November?
Big time. I think that in June it's going to be very strongly Hillary, the Latino community and the African American community, and I think all of them are going to be strongly there.
Right.
November, this is a blue state, and I think that we're going to continue to keep it blue.
His name is Jimmy Gomez. He is a member of the California State Assembly. My name is Brad Pomerance. We're at the California Democratic Party Convention in San Jose, California. This is Charter Local Edition.